Okay, first question, what's my practice routine? Good question. It all varies depending on how much time I have. If I was going to sit down and have like a full blown, like few hour practice session, usually I'll try to always do at least 20 to 30 minutes of just warming up. And the warm up varies. A lot of times I'll just go through a scale, do a bunch of different intervals and scales. Sometimes major scales, sometimes I'll do different modes, or I'll do melodic minor, or I'll do diminished scales, stuff like that. So, for example, maybe I'll take like a G major scale and I'll just do all the intervals, just thirds. Then I'll do fourths. And then work my way up fifths. Sixths. Sevenths. Go through that, and then maybe I will do the arpeggios throughout the scale. So I'll go through a G major scale and I'll do it in triad. So G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, G major. And then I'll add the seventh to that. So then G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D dominant 7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, G major 7. So I'll take that, I'll try to do that in multiple positions on the necks, just to help my general knowledge of being able to play these things throughout the entirety of the neck. And then I might do the same thing in melodic minor, so I'll just switch it to G melodic minor. So I'll start with thirds. Fourths. Fifths. Sixths. violence. And I like that kind of stuff because it's not only practicing technique and whatnot, it's also practicing theory. Let me check this. Does that help with that? No, it's still going on. It's also practicing theory as well, and also just helping you get a better understanding of the scales and what's going on. Different interval combinations that sound cool together, which I like, and all of those things you can do them as chords too. So like the thirds. Fourths. I think I skipped one. Fifths. I'm sorry. Oh, that was right. Diminished fifth. Sixths. So, as many different permutations you can come up with off of stuff like that. And that's basically what I'll do in terms of scales and arpeggios and whatnot. And then beyond that, I might try some, like, sometimes I'll do some stuff from the Bach sonatas and partitas for violin. Like, I don't know it completely from memory, but I'll do, like... I forget the rest of it, but I'll do a lot of that too. And I always do it with a metronome. Start at a speed that's comfortable and try to just gradually increase it, maybe in groups of 5 beats per minute or something like that. So that'll be my warm-up. And then beyond that, so I'll do that for a warm-up, and then maybe I'll work on some repertoire. Either I'm learning some standards, or working on some chord melodies for some stuff, or just practicing incorporating some stuff that I might have transcribed, or just some new ideas, maybe some new triad pairs, or some new licks, or some new approach patterns, any different kind, whatever I've been kind of checking out and listening to that week. And that's basically the majority of it if I was going to set aside a bunch of time or a transcription that I might be working on. But yeah, thanks for the question. Next question, could you talk a bit about your choice of pick, what material and stuff? I used to play Dunlop 205 on an arch top, but lately I've been playing with the round side of a 73.73 millimeter because it makes the notes more clear. Back in the day, I used to like the Jazz 3s. I think it's Dunlop makes them, the Dunlop Jazz 3s. I use them a lot. Now I've switched over to the Dunlop 1.5, the Tortoise one. Can't really, get a bad angle. Maybe it's easier to see from here. Yeah, these are 1.5. I like these a lot. I'm kind of a creature of habit. If I find something I like, I kind of stick with it. I'm not one of these guys that tries out a ton of different picks or buys a bunch of different gear and stuff like that. I probably should. I should do more of that because I'd probably learn a lot more that way. But I tend to like this pick. I like a more heavier pick, and the tone I get from it. I used to use the thicker ones, the dark purple ones that were 2.5 millimeter, but switching down to the 1.5, I like this a little bit more. The only time I'll ever switch to a thinner pick is if I'm doing some like strumming on an acoustic. Then I might use just like a Fender medium or something like that, because I like, when I'm strumming acoustic stuff, I like a little bit of a thinner pick. I think the sound of the thinner pick against the strings when you're strumming sounds a little bit better. But typically for all my jazz and just anything that's not acoustic strumming, I always use the 1.5, you Everyone joining us now, if you have any questions, any songs you want me to try out, anything you want to hear, just shoot it into the chat. I'm happy to get to it. Actually, I have a Jazz 3. I got a black. I don't know where this came from. I got a little black Jazz 3 to compare the difference. Yeah, it's great. I haven't used these in so long. I'm not even really comfortable with these. They're too thin for me now compared to the. My amp sounding like. Favorite artists and albums? Great question. Um, I'll go by genre. As for rock stuff, as you could probably tell by my videos, I'm a huge Beach Boys fan. I discovered them later in life. I only discovered them about 2 or 3 years ago, but I always thought it was just surf rock music. I kind of had the typical um, idea that most people I think have of the Beach Boys. You think of like Surfing USA and stuff like that. And then a friend of mine took a lesson with the great bass player Matt Penman, jazz guy from the city, and they were talking about slash chords, and he was saying to check out Pet Sounds, and then my friend told me about it, and I was blown away. So as far as that goes, yeah, Beach Boys, that's a huge one. I love Pink Floyd for rock stuff. For older rock, Beach Boys, Pink Floyd, Nick Drake is a big one. The Beatles, obviously. Um, for newer rock, and not newer, but within like the past few decades, I love Radiohead. I really like Tame Impala, Grizzly Bear. Um, for prog rock, one of my favorite bands, kind of a lesser known band, this band from the UK named Ocean Size. They're not together anymore, but I'll write that down. Um, and I'll write a couple albums of theirs. Everyone. Also, I love the Contortionist. They have a really cool album called Clairvoyant. I'll put all these in there. I love Meshuggah for heavier stuff. Let's see, what else? I mean, there's so many. Slowdive. Um, Boards of Canada I love electronic stuff too. I love Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada, William Basinski, Brian Eno. Some of my favorite, if I was going to say some of my favorite albums of all time, my top, if I had to narrow it down, definitely a few. David Bowie's Low, which is an amazing album with Brian Eno. I also love Tom York has a solo album called Tomorrow's Modern Boxes. That Ocean Size album that I had just mentioned. What else? Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, and Beach Boys Today, definitely up there. Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles, probably my favorite Beatles album. Um, yeah, I think that's a bunch. For jazz, probably some of my favorite. I love Oscar Peterson, Night Train, one of my all-time favorite albums. Roundabout Midnight, Miles Davis. I love Supreme, Coltrane. Paul Desmond has an album called Like Someone in Love with Ed Bickert on guitar. It's a live album, live in Toronto. Absolutely love that album. Love Ed Bickert's playing. What's next? How do I approach transcribing? In what ways have I developed oral shortcuts, as it were? So everybody approaches transcribing in a different way, and everybody has a different way of getting to it. I started out early on. I wasn't a good student when I first started guitar lessons. I wasn't good at learning how to read music and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of just did a lot of stuff by ear. And I remember back when I was a kid, I would listen to like Santana. I used to love the Santana Supernatural album. And I remember I would just kind of listen to a lot of the solos and transcribe a lot of the solos. And, sorry, let me turn this off. I would listen to a lot of the solos, transcribe a lot of it, but I didn't have any idea what was going on, like the theory and stuff like that. But I started like that, and then so most of my early upbringing was mostly just learning things by ear, and a lot of it I would just like listen to something, and I would just try to, if I couldn't figure out the note, I would just keep playing the same part over and over again, and just try to get a general idea, like, all right, is this note higher or lower on the fretboard? Get an idea, try to find it. If it's the wrong note, just slowly work my way up, see if I can find it. And the more and more you do that, the quicker you get at it, and the more solos you learn, the quicker you get at learning solos too, because you start learning more and more. Because every style of music has like some vocab that's very apparent to like that style. So like if you're learning like rock solos and stuff like that, I'm sure at some point you're going to hear like all those kind of licks, right? We hear that all the time. And same thing with jazz. Like if you're learning a jazz solo, you're probably going to hear like or something like that, or so there's certain vocab, and the more you learn, the quicker it gets at being able to identify that. So a lot of the transcribing I do now is mostly stuff that I hear that I'm not aware of that really catches my ear. And that's a lot of what the Lick of the Week videos I do are. It's like if I'm listening to something and I hear something, I'm like, oh, wow, that's really unique. I wonder what that is. Um, so I would say at this point now, another really good exercise too is if you get comfortable enough transcribing, try to see if you can transcribe something without the guitar. Like maybe figure out what key the song is in at first, and then see if you can write it out just using your ear. And there's a lot of different exercises for ear training and stuff like that. There's a great book by what's it? The Ottman. I forget the name of it. It was a book that I did in college in my sight singing and ear training class. But basically gets you comfortable looking at music and being able to sing the notes without actually playing them, being able to identify like what the key is, and then being able to identify like what note it's starting on, being able to hear which interval it's starting on. So like for example, like if we're in the key of A, and I say like, all right, it starts on the third is ma, or the sixth, five, da, five, little things like that. And you can just do that just by maybe take an A major scale, just play like an A chord, do re mi fa sol la ti do, and then see if you can play like this, do sol la sol ti fa mi, little things like that, being able to identify the notes in the scale without actually playing them. And that's a great exercise for that. So, I mean, there's so many different things you can do, and that's a really broad question. But to condense an answer into to be as thorough as I can in as few words as possible, that's pretty much been some of my approach to transcribing. And also listening with headphones a lot really helps a lot, especially if you're trying to figure out chords and stuff like that, because a lot of times that's probably where I would say I have the biggest challenge sometimes now. If I'm trying to figure out some voicings, like let's say a voicing that's on piano and I'm trying to translate it to guitar, I really have to listen close with headphones, and I have to keep repeating the voicing over and over again. And a lot of times I might be able to get like the bottom note and the top note, and then from there I'm trying to listen really, really closely and see if I can fill in the middle notes. And a lot of times, like if you kind of understand what the tonality of the chord is, you can just do process of elimination from there. And I do that a lot. Like sometimes I'll transcribe some Beach Boys, like barbershop quartet stuff, and a lot of those voicings aren't like very naturally lined up on the guitar. So I'll do a lot of that stuff, and a lot of times I can get like a few of the notes, and then from there, if I know the quality, I'll just kind of think like, all right, well I know this is E flat major, and this is the bottom note, this is the top note. So what are some other options? Is there a C in it? And then I'll just try to hear the C, and then I'll listen very, very closely to the voicing and see if I could hear a C note. And if I can't, then I'll move to a different note. And usually if you listen close enough and you really kind of ingrain those notes into your ears, eventually you'll be able to tell what's going on there or not. But yeah, great questions. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or any requests? Feel free. Shoot them out. How do I discover new music and what's some new music I've found? That's a great question. Um, it really all depends. It depends on who I'm listening to. I mean, Spotify is a great tool because a lot of times if you have an artist that you're listening to that you really like, you can just go down Spotify and just look for similar artists. And a lot of times I'll just go to the similar artists and I'll listen to like their most listened to songs just to just to start out with. Um, Lately, I've been trying to check out a lot more classical stuff. A lot of stuff. I mean, there's so much classical, so I'm just trying to really expand my knowledge of classical and stuff like that. A couple pieces that I've listened to recently that I really like are I'll write them all down. Um, what else? What else have I been listening to? That's some classical stuff. Beyond that, I really like the new Tame Impala album. I've been really into that. I really like the new Eminem album. I like what else is newer that I've been listening to. That Contortionist album, Clairvoyant. That's something I discovered relatively recently. What else? There's this artist Van Art that I really like. He's the singer from Ocean Size. He has a great album called "To Cure a Blizzard Upon the Sea," I believe. So I mean, as you can see, I'm kind of all over the place, right? I started out with classical music, and then I got into Eminem, Tame Impala, and stuff like that. But yeah, just constantly trying to expand. Like if I a lot of times too, like a few years ago, my friend turned me on to My Bloody Valentine, which I had never heard of, and they told me it was a genre of music called shoegaze, which is a genre I had never even heard of. So I just went online, I typed in like top 20 shoegaze albums or something like that, and then you just get a list of all these albums. And a lot of times if you compare lists, there's a lot of really mutually exclusive albums that people agree on. So that's a good starting point because then you know then like what a lot of other people mutually like, and then you can start from there. So yeah, a lot of it is just that kind of stuff. I don't know any Joe DiOrio compositions, unfortunately. I know a lot of Joe DiOrio licks. I've checked out a lot of his books. But what's like, I mean, I studied with Joe DiOrio for a little bit, so I learned like a lot of his cool like um, I can show you a cool intro he does over on Green Dolphin Street from the Duo album with Mick Goodrick. It's in C major. He goes, and then eventually he goes, I'm sorry. Does some sort of sweep. One of my favorite Joe DiOrio licks is this 2-5-1 he does in Blue Bossa. He goes, I love that sound. Kind of has like a falling down the stairs kind of effect. Hey, let me try. I gotta set this. My amp sounds weird today. Let me just check what's going So the way I originally got hooked up with Joe DiOrio was I went to a guitar camp in New Milford, Connecticut, back when it was still around, called National Guitar Workshop. Amazing camp. And there was some guy, some jazz teacher there, and he told me he said, there's a legendary jazz guitarist, Joe DiOrio, who actually still teaches this to this day, and he lives in Waterbury. And that was back in the day before before cell phones and stuff like that. So I looked up Diorio in the phone book and I found his number. So I kind of just called him. I was super nervous, and I asked him if he taught, if I could come for a lesson. He said yeah, and I got really lucky, really fortunate because he wasn't teaching a lot at that time. And I went there and we had our first lesson, and I didn't really know much about him at that time, so I didn't know that he had a stroke. So he wasn't really able to play that much. He could like play a little bit and demonstrate things here and there, but his hands would get really tired and they would lock up really quickly. So we had like one lesson at first, and then he recommended getting his fusion book, so I started doing that. And I continued lessons with him, and then I actually started doing like going to a master class once a week that he would do every Tuesday, and I did that for over a year. And he was just an amazing, amazing person, an incredible player, and just such a wealth of knowledge. I mean, he's one of these people who, over his entire life, he would constantly just write stuff down. Anytime he came up with an idea, he would just write it down. So he just had notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of just stuff from over the years and all these crazy things. A lot of cool, like Slonimsky patterns. He checked out a lot of the Slonimsky book. So a lot of the stuff we did, it was very modern stuff. It wasn't a lot of straight ahead kind of stuff. A lot of very exotic chord melody stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was great because he just, you would just like bring up a tune, let's say like Stella by Starlight, and he'd just be like, oh, here's a cool voicing for the first chord. I remember he showed me this chord. Just like he's just one of these guys, like anything you mention to him, he's got some sort of cool trick for it and some sort of, hip thing. I love that voicing. E, and then you go to the B flat on the third string, then your pinky goes to F sharp, middle finger goes to A. It's a pain. But against your E minor 7 flat 5, it's the root, flat 5, 9, and 11. Let me see if this helps. Yeah, and I still have all the papers that we did. I mean, they're all over the place in my archives, but I mean, he's just an amazing guy, an amazing player. And then there's so many, bootleg recordings that I was turned on to through the mutual, students of his that went to the classes that I went to. And he was, I mean, I'm so grateful to have, I only lived like 20 minutes from him, so I'm so grateful to have lived so close to him and been able to take advantage of that opportunity. I haven't talked to him in years. I kind of feel bad about it. I feel like I should give him a call. But yeah, I mean, that's the gist of like what most of our lessons were. Is basically just me going in there and just picking his brain, and him just having a plethora of knowledge to share. I've noticed over time that pop artists who write at the piano come up with sophisticated songs like Wilson and McCartney, which I think is because things like slash chords are easier to play. Do you agree? That's a great point, and I definitely think you're right with that, because I think when you're writing at the piano, coming up with a slash chord can be much easier. You can even do it accidentally, and then all of a sudden realize that it sounds cool. Whereas on the guitar, to take like a D chord and then put the F sharp in the bass, you have to rework the entire fingering. But on piano, you just have the D chord in your left hand, and all of a sudden you can just hit the F sharp and be like, oh, that sounds nice. So I definitely agree with that. Yeah, that's why I always gravitate towards the harmony of a lot of, as far as classic rock and stuff like that goes, a lot of the guys that wrote for piano and stuff like that, I tend to gravitate towards the harmony of that. And yeah, I mean, obviously Brian Wilson's use of slash chords is absolutely insane, So, Trab Rex, did you study with Joe? Were you the guy that said you studied with Joe DiOrio? There was some guy that commented on one of my videos saying that he studied with Joe. Yes, I am taking requests. Anything you want, shoot it out. Put me on the spot. Let's see if I can handle it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I do what I can. I mean, a lot of what I do is just trying to get more of the piano stuff on the guitar. I always tend to gravitate more towards piano players. I kind of wish that piano was my main instrument sometimes. I think most people wish that their primary instrument wasn't their main. I mean, Alan Holdsworth always said that he wished that he played saxophone. So maybe sometimes it's good if you'd rather play something else than your main instrument, because then it forces you to try to come up with different ways of accommodating for that. You know, Holdsworth really wanted to be a sax player, but he played guitar. So because of that, he came up with this absurd, vocab that barely, and I don't know anybody else that could play like Holdsworth, and probably a lot of that just came down to the fact that he wanted to achieve more of a saxophone sound on the guitar. SRV? Sure. I played that one forever. I was obsessed with that stuff in high school. Solo through using tritone substitutions, back cycling through the circle of fifths. Okay, so we'll do, let's say we'll do a rhythm changes bridge. So I'll start on D7. D7, tritone sub D flat 7, C7, B7. Keep resolving it to B flat because I'm thinking of rhythm changes. Do I know any Bill Evans? Let me think. I haven't played it. I forget the B section. I used to. What's another one? I knew. I forget what that song's called, but that's a really cool one. An interesting thing about that song is it has a dominant 7 chord with a major 7 on the top. It's like, because the melody's. Right, that chord right there, it's a C7. It's like your C7 sharp 5 voicing, but then also on top you have a B. So it's B flat, E, A flat, B. I've never seen that in any other song. It's a cool sound. It kind of works though because it slides up to the C, so it kind of gives you that blues scale. That blues scale sound, you know. I used to know that song Perry's Scope too. I don't think I know it now, but I used to know a good amount of Bill Evans. There was this great Bill Evans chord melody book by guitarist Sid Jacobs. I would highly recommend it if you're into Bill Evans. He had this amazing like open string thing. I don't remember. It was like something like that. But I love those strings. So he kind of figured out a way to get some of those Bill Evans voicings on the guitar with those clusters, just by finding different spots where you can do open strings. Like this is a great B major 7 voicing, because you have the open B string, and then you're getting the major 7 all the way up here on your 13th fret of the A string. So you get that half step, but because of the open string, right? So A sharp, pinky on D sharp, pointer finger on F sharp. Right, beautiful voicing. Right, I think this is a good one. Anyone else got any requests? I think there's a slight delay between the video and the chat based on what I'm seeing. So if I'm answering questions slightly later than you're asking, that's why. Thank you. I appreciate that. This is a cool sweep that Joe DiOrio showed me. It's from minor 7 flat 5. Let's say we're in G. flat. Then you have your middle finger on D flat, pointer finger on F. Now this is, I love that ending. Ring finger on C, and then pointer finger on D flat, pinky on A, all different strings, and you let them ring out. That's a pain coming back. That works really nice if you're doing the invitation, the second half. You do that sweep at the end there. All right, we've got 3 questions. Favorite licks and chord melodies. That's a tough one. I mean, there's so many. Let me think. I mean, a lot of them, my favorite licks are probably videos I've made of the lick of the weeks. For a while, one of my favorite 251 licks was this West lick that he plays on Satin Doll. I'm sorry. I thought that was like a perfect everything. It's like every single note is just perfect. There's no notes being wasted there. And then that little perfect resolution to F major. That's one of my favorite licks. As far as chord melodies go, I love the stuff that Ted Green does. I can't do a lot of it. I wish I could. Ted Green is definitely one of my favorite chord melody guys. I love what he does for the song Danny Boy. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Who else? Ed Bickert has some amazing chord melody stuff. What else? Let's see what else. Alternate picking exercise that I do. What do I do? Depends. All depends. Sometimes I'll just take like a 4-finger exercise and work it through alternate picking. So like, obviously the obvious one is 1, 2, 3, and then alternate, like just change up the pattern. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, I can do like 1, 4, 2, 3. So stuff like that for doing multiple notes per string. Also just alternate picking, just taking like chords and just like one note per string. That definitely helps a lot because that's obviously probably the hardest situation you'll ever encounter picking wise. Beyond that, a lot of just going through scales and different intervals. I covered all this at the very beginning of the video, so once this is done, if you want to just check the video, I walk through like all of my warm-ups with different scales, and it's all related to alternate picking. Also, like I was saying in the earlier too, at the beginning of the video, the Bach sonatas and partitas for violin. That kind of stuff, all great stuff. A lot of times, I mean, a lot of it is great because it's you can't find. I'm not sure what you can't find what. A lot of times, stuff that's not really naturally meant to be on the guitar, like the Bach violin stuff and stuff like that, that's really good too because it gives you these awkward, picking patterns that you might not be comfortable with. That brings you outside your comfort zone. And if you can do that kind of stuff, then it makes all the typical like guitar picking stuff way easier. How do you play a chord progression for a song? How about you? Okay, I am quite poor at naming chords once it gets complex. The Matthew Southern Comfort version of Woodstock would be beautiful for one of the chord melodies. It has some slide in it. Interesting, cool. I'm not sure if I understand the question about the first question you asked about the chord progression for a song you were writing. But if you can, if there's anything you want me to try out, I mean, if you can further clarify, I'd be happy to try it out. And if you're saying do it again slower for that Diorio thing, I'll do it in G. G, hammer on the B, middle finger on D flat, pointer finger on F, and then ring finger on C, pointer finger on D flat, pinky on A. You're playing all three of them at the same time. It works nice as triplets because it's 6 notes. A lot of our lessons would just be stuff like that, just be like, oh, here's this cool sweep for this, or here's this cool pattern. He's got so much crazy vocab. You guys got any other questions? Anything you want to hear? Any requests? Sweeping, yeah, that's a great one. That's a really tricky one. I got very lucky because before I was into jazz, I started out more into like shredding and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time. I spent years just practicing stuff with the metronome really slowly, just doing a lot of the technical kind of stuff. But the thing with like a lot of the metal stuff, when you're getting into like a lot of just the older shred guys, not really the newer guys. The newer guys are pushing the boundaries a lot more, but a lot of the older shred guys, it's very like not very harmonically and melodically like advanced. It's much more just kind of like 3-note, like 3-note per string scales and stuff like that, and going through them. So for sweeping, I would just recommend maybe take just to get the sweep feeling down, take like just a G bar chord and just practice like the main thing is you always want to lift each finger, right? You don't want this because then it's basically just like playing a bar chord, but just strumming the strings, one at a time. So try to lift each finger. And when you're doing the actual sweep, it shouldn't feel like you're lifting the pick in between each string. Your hand should just be falling right into the string. It shouldn't feel like you're putting a lot of effort. If it feels like this, like that, you want. Right, and coming back is typically most people, myself included, have a harder time coming back than going down. So the and there's actually a great DVD, or you can probably find it online. I'll write it down. That John Petrucci Rock Discipline helped me out a lot, and I'm pretty sure he's got like a sweep exercise, like something like that. I could be mixing it up with something else, but basically that's just like you do the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth fret from your D string to your E string, and you just go, and then you just reverse the fingering, invert it. So now it's 3, 4, 5, 6, starting on the E string, and then you do 4 ups. And that's really good. That's really good to just get comfortable with the sweep motion. And a lot of times in jazz, most of the sweeping is like 4 notes. Obviously, there are exceptions, and you can do further sweeps. Like that Joe one is pretty crazy. But a lot of people refer to this as the jazz sweep. You just do like a major 7 shape. You sweep all the way down, and then you do an upstroke on the way up on the 6th fret. And I think like Les Paul did that. There's like this whole debate over who the first sweep picker was, and a lot of people say that Les Paul was the first one ever because he did that, which is certainly possible. What advice would you give from moving from more elementary stuff to jazz? Of course, you encounter jazz chords from a lot of pop music, but in terms of jazz within its own right, I'm struggling to know where to start past learning modes and stuff, and jazz is really intimidating as someone to imitate as a novice. Yeah, great question. It is challenging, and I don't know if you have a teacher or not. It could be very overwhelming if it's something you try to do on your own, because you kind of look at it and there's just like so many different things to cover. It's hard to know where to get started. But understanding the modes is definitely good, and I would say try to get like try to really know your modes inside and out, because so much stuff comes under modes. And just having a basic understanding of how the modes work and stuff like that. So I could. So I don't know if you know I don't know anything about your playing, so I don't know if you know modes or not. But that's basically just taking the major scale and knowing all 7 fingerings of the major scale. And each one of those is a mode. This is a lot. This is very in depth. This is kind of a tricky thing just to answer in a brief question. But I would say get really comfortable with your modes. And then once you learn your modes, I would say, or if you already know them, then practice like going through the arpeggios of the modes. And yeah, that will give you just a basic knowledge of a lot of what's going on with that. And then that, because each mode functions over certain types of chords. So if you're playing something and you see a certain chord and you're a little bit unfamiliar with what to play over it, usually there's going to be some type of mode or some type of scale that goes with it. And being able to have a really in-depth knowledge of all those scales can go a long way, because then that, you can survive over all these chords. Because I remember starting out with jazz, and you look at a chart and you see all these chords, and it's just so overwhelming, and you're just like, what's going on here? I see all these chords, like, what do I play over all of them? So that would be a starting point. And also, like, let's say there's like a specific song you're trying to learn. If you have a hard time over certain chords or something like that, see if you can transcribe somebody playing over it. Listen to some, classic guitar players, Grant Green, Wes Montgomery, Jim Hall, any of those guys, and see if they play some stuff that you like. See if you can transcribe it and kind of analyze it and be like, all right, what are they doing here? Like, oh, I see they're using this note over this chord. Like, that's a good sound. And I did a lot of that. That really helped out a lot. Like, I remember for a long time I had a really hard time with rhythm changes. So I just got to a point where I would just listen to as many different guys playing over rhythm changes as possible. And anytime they played something I liked, I would just figure it out and try to analyze it and figure out what's going on. And then try to just make it part of my own playing and try to come up with my own stuff off of that, right? Because that's what, jazz is. There's vocab to jazz, and you learn the vocab from other guys who have kind of developed the vocab way back when, and you learn from it, and then you kind of try to take some of that and make it into your own. So I would say that's probably the best way to get going with that. To answer a very in-depth question as brief as I can. Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know. I've heard of that Holdsworth song, but I'm not. I can't say if I've. I mean, I'm sure if I heard, I'd recognize it, but I'm not good with a lot of Holdsworth song titles. Because a lot of times, just I'm not good at knowing certain song titles, especially when it comes to fusion songs. Um, but yeah, I mean, Holdsworth wrote some incredibly intricate songs. Very. Does that instantaneous adaptability just come from practice then? Well, I'd have to listen to the specific video you're talking about, but I'm willing to bet if it's a composition of his and there's specific time changes and stuff like that, and even a lot of that stuff you can develop that. Like I remember I used to have a really hard time playing over odd meters or playing standards and odd time signatures and stuff like that. But now I'm at a point now where like if somebody wants to play like a song in 5 or 7 or something like that, I'm pretty comfortable doing it. But it's because I've listened to it enough and I've kind of just developed more of a feel over those odd meters, and that's something that can definitely be developed. Just trying to have an awareness of the time, where the time is at all times, and just listen to a lot of stuff that has a lot of crazy time changes and stuff like that, and see if you can keep your place. You know, um, and yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that's a good way to go about doing it. Load down the Guitar Grimoire book for modes. Well, never heard of it. I'll check it out though. Oh, yeah, I'm glad to do it 2 weeks in a row. I need to start doing more of these because I'm trying to get my channel monetized, and I have enough subscribers, but I need to get more watch hours. I'm getting closer and closer to the watch hours. So, but these live streams help a lot because if I do like a couple hour live streams and people watch it, that helps. That definitely adds some hours to the channel. So I'm definitely going to be doing more of these. So definitely be on the lookout. If you think of any questions you want to ask me, prior to any of these live streams, by all means, ask me anything you want. You guys get any albums you've been checking out lately? Anything you want to recommend? Always looking for new music. Oh, thank you. The sixth and third pentatonic. Oh, nice, nice. Thanks. I'm glad you liked it. Great. If you have any other questions, yeah, shoot it out. Happy to talk about anything you want. Thank you. That's very nice of you. I appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully the channel. I mean, the channel keeps growing. I've only been doing it for about a year and a half, so obviously it's a little bit smaller now. But I'm just going to keep putting out stuff. Stick with it as long as I can. I've been putting out 3 videos a week for almost a year and a half now, and I haven't missed a week yet. So I plan on to keep doing that. I love making the videos. So, but I'm glad you like the channel. It's very nice of you. So, final question: any advice for getting out into the live scene? Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, surrounding yourself with a lot of musicians. I mean, I'm fortunate because I went to a music high school in New Haven, Connecticut, and then I went to college for music. So throughout my high school and college, I was always surrounded by tons of musicians and stuff like that. But it is so. I mean, I don't know where you live too, and I don't know what the music scene is like where you are. But the best way to meet people, if you're busy with work and stuff like that. Is like going to jam sessions, because online apps and all that kind of stuff, you can meet people through there, but the best experiences are always in person. If you can go to a jam session and there are people playing and you just go up and you meet them and you network and you get their numbers and stuff like that, a lot of stuff comes out of that. I'm not that good about doing stuff like that either. I definitely need to be better about it. I'm very introverted. I just like doing stuff like this, just staying at home and playing and stuff like that. But I've definitely met a lot of people through stuff like that. So I would say just look around, see if you can find any sort of local music in your area. And also the Facebook has a lot of groups. Facebook pretty much has like a group for like every state. I don't know what state you live in, but I live in Connecticut. So I could just go on Facebook and type in Connecticut musicians. And there's a huge Facebook group. You just join it, do a post, say I'm looking for some people to play with, specify what kind of music you're into. And I'm sure you would get some people through that too. So I mean, those are two approaches that definitely should work. Brett Garson released a new album with Three Crows about 6 months ago, but it's like buy only, no Amazon library. Oh, okay, so it's not on streaming or anything like that. I love Brett Garson. I haven't checked out a lot of him, but I mean, some of the stuff I used to have this instructional video he did for REH, a fusion instructional video, and his legato technique is like absurd. He's just one of the best. I used to love, he had an album that he did. It was him, Frank Gambale, and Sean Lane, called MVP. I used to love that album. I mean, I still love it. I haven't heard it in a long time though. But I remember Brett Garson, one of the best like fusion guys in terms of just like the smoothness of his legato and the fluidity of his lines. I always was a huge Brett Garson fan. I should do a Brett Garson lick for one of my Lick of the Week videos. I've heard of it. I've never checked out the Holdsworth one. Are there multiple MVP albums? Is that what it is? And they just get different guitar players for each one? Because I know MVP was Mark Varney project. I don't know. Is that a musician in the group or something? Is it beta male move to go vegan? That's a good question. I've heard that doing yoga can be considered beta male. You're not alpha if you do yoga. That's what I've heard that from multiple people. So I don't know. If you're a vegan, I think we should leave it up to the chat. I don't know what they think about that, but it might be beta male. But who knows? That's a great question. There's a definite Manchester, England, or Manchester, Connecticut. I've heard that Montreal has an amazing jazz scene. I've only been there. I've been there once for a day, but Canada. Those Canadian boys really know what they're doing. The Replacements. Never even heard of them. I'll check that out. And I love that's a Ravel turnaround. I love. That's right. Where's it go? Something like that. It's been a while. That brings me back to my high school days. I haven't done that stuff in forever. I don't know. Can you do it on Expert? I've heard good things about your guitar playing, or your Guitar Hero playing. I've heard good things, Paul. The overdrive pedal, I have a full tone GT 500. It's not really more meant for like heavier stuff. It's more just like if I'm playing like a jazz gig and I want to throw on a little bit of gain for more of like a rock solo or something like that. I use it more for that. And I have a Tube Screamer, but I haven't used the Tube Screamer in a while. But yeah, I like it. It's a good pedal. Oh yeah, sorry, I missed MD98. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'll see you the next time. Have a good night. Have you ever seen the videos of Ted Green improvise? Oh yeah, insane, crazy. Yeah, Ted Green is just like a freak of nature, such an amazing guitar player. I want to get his book, Chord Chemistry. I've been meaning to check that out for years. Just saw your Morning Bell Amnesiac cover. Oh, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to do another one next month. I'm going to hopefully do Sail to the Moon off of Hail to the Thief. I love that song. I'm going to do like a little 2 guitar arrangement of that one. Trying to find some more Radiohead songs that I can do. I want to do that one. I want to do Daydreaming off of the newest album. I just got to find some that translate nicely to the 2 guitar arrangements. But I love Radiohead. Huge Radiohead fan. I was thinking about maybe trying out a couple of Tom York solo stuff too. I did the Eraser already. I want to see if I can find a couple off of Tomorrow's Modern Boxes. Tomorrow's Modern Boxes is one of my favorite albums. I think super underrated album in my opinion. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. You got any Radiohead requests? See if I can bust any of them up. I'm sorry. That song is crazy because it's actually in 4. It doesn't feel like it at all, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. is 1, 2, 3. It's like a group of 3 and a group of 5. It's like 1, 2, or so it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2, 1, 2. It's really weird the way the rhythms line up. It's all over the place. Oh, nice. Ted Green. That's awesome. I'll check that out. Yeah, there's so many great online resources for books now. I use ISMLP or IMSLP for the public domain classical stuff all the time. Amazing website, amazing resource. Do I know any other? I'm trying to think of any other Radiohead songs. Yeah, one of them that always throws me off is Body Snatchers. That's one of those songs where I listen to the beginning opening riff, and I always think I know where the timing is, and then the drums come in, and I'm just like, wait, what? It always throws me off. Um, Videotape. I'm sorry. I think it's out. I'm kind of just figuring it out on the spot. I'm probably not doing it exactly right. That's the best I could do with that one. That's a beautiful song. I love that one. That whole album. That's probably my favorite Radiohead album. What else? What else can I do? What else? Beautiful song. Um, I love Avishai Cohen and Tigran Hamazian. One of my favorite albums is Mock Root by Tigran Hamazian. Um, that song "Entertain Me." I love those poly. I mean, that whole album is incredible. His other stuff is incredible too, and I love Avishai Cohen. Actually played that song on my senior recital when I was in college. Um, yeah, Avishai Cohen is incredible. The head of the jazz department, Jimmy Green, where I went to college, he's played with Avishai Cohen. There's an incredible live video. I'm going to put the link in the chat because this is definitely worth checking out. You've probably seen it already, but the guy playing soprano sax there was the head of the jazz department at my college. What is it? Let me see. Yeah, this is incredible. And Avishai Cohen takes the most absurd solo. He's got some chops on the bass. Yeah, check this out. He does this cool. I remember in the Avishai Cohen solo, he does this cool harmonic. He goes. There's like the obviously a little bit easier on bass, and he does the. I think I remember the polyrhythms. Something like that. I might be doing the rhythm slightly wrong, but that's exactly what you were talking about, like those crazy polyrhythms that can throw you. Da, 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 da. I remember that second part. I don't remember the exact melody, but I remember getting the sheet music, and it was like in 13/8 or something crazy like that. That's one of those songs where I just get really comfortable knowing what the melody sounds like and just use that as a guide, because counting to 13 is, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna try to do that. Um, yeah, I love Tigran Hamazian. I don't know if you've checked out Nate Wood. He's got a lot. That's that guy that plays like 4 instruments at the same time. I'm gonna send you something. If you like Tigran Hamazian, he actually plays drums on some of the Tigran Hamazian albums. But this specific one is like one of the craziest. I love this. If you've never seen this before, this will freak you out. He was also a drummer in the band Kneebody, really awesome band. think a lot of times they're doing a lot of it just by ear. I don't think they're necessarily sitting down and saying like, all right, I'm going to write like a polyrhythm in 13/8 or something like that. I think a lot of times, I think the more and more you play music like that, the more comfortable you get hearing stuff like that just on your own. I've definitely noticed that myself, where a lot of times I might come up with a riff and it might be in 5 or 7, but I wasn't sitting there thinking like, all right, I'm going to write something in 7. It's just I've listened and played enough music in different odd meters where you get to the point where it's kind of part of your vocab and stuff like that. Obviously, there are certain like certain meters that might be a little bit trickier and stuff like that, and it's not like it applies to every single thing. But yeah, blue cheese. I'm definitely a blue cheese over a ranch guy. Anytime a place serves wings and they give you ranch, that's usually a red flag to me. I don't think there's any comparison between ranch and blue cheese. And I believe it's spelled Bleu. Let me just double check that. Let me fact check that. No, it is. It is spelled Blue. I don't know why I always thought it was Bleu. That's weird. Where? That's yeah. Where did I get that? Is it? It says here either is correct. Oh, okay. Bleu is the French spelling. So, if you want to seem more sophisticated, I guess, if you want to come off more pretentious, do the Bleu. But if not, just stick with the regular blue. That's fine too. Yeah, I had buffalo chicken yesterday. It's funny that you said that. I haven't had buffalo chicken in forever. I had a buffalo chicken salad yesterday. Put some blue cheese crumbles on it, and the blue cheese crumbles makes all the difference. If without the blue cheese, it's just not the same. Wings and blue cheese, it's like milk and cookies. They just go hand in hand. You have to have both of them together. You guys got any favorite wing places? I don't know where you guys are from, but I know there's a lot of places that have some places that are famous for their wings. We got a really cool place here in Connecticut, in Derby, Connecticut, called the Dewdrop Inn. My brother, they have they have 94 flavors of wings or something like that. And the other day, my brother tried all 94 flavors over a span of like however he's been going there like every week for multiple years, and he tried all 94 flavors. This place has been around since the 70s. He was the first person to try every single flavor, which was impressive. So yeah, shout out to my brother. But ranch can be good mixed with buffalo sauce. I've never done that. That sounds interesting. I like mixing garlic with buffalo sauce. Like yesterday when I made the buffalo chicken, in a pan, I put some butter in a pan, and then I put in some Frank's red hot sauce, and then I took like a garlic press or whatever it's called, and I pressed like a clove of garlic in there, and the garlic added a nice little touch to it. But I've never mixed blue cheese or ranch with it. But that's interesting. I've never been a fan of ranch. The only time I ever remember using ranch dressing was when I was in high school. The pizza was really bad, and I remember I had to dip it in ranch dressing just to make it tolerable. And that's the only time I ever remember using ranch dressing, because they didn't have blue cheese. Otherwise, I totally would have used the blue cheese over the ranch. Because I'm not a fan of like any of the salads that typically come with ranch. I think a Cobb salad typically has ranch dressing. I'm not a fan of Cobb salads. It's funny we're saying this too. I was watching Curb Your Enthusiasm yesterday, and the whole episode was like about the Cobb salad, and this guy claiming that his grandpa or some distant relative invented the Cobb salad, and it turned out the guy was lying. So. Yeah, I don't know where you guys are from, but from Connecticut, one thing that Connecticut is famous for is the pizza. We have some of the best pizza in the world. New Haven, Connecticut specifically has like 3 places that are ranked. Like if you go online and you type in like best pizza places in the world, you'll find at least 2 or 3 from Connecticut. There's like an entire I don't know if you ever watch Barstool Pizza, but you can see a lot of the Connecticut spots that he reviews. There's a ton. I think he lives in Boston, so he reviews a lot of places in like New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and one of the highest rated ones is in New Haven, Connecticut. Sally's Pizza, which he gave a 9.2 out of 10. And that's my favorite pizza place of all time. I've tried a ton of pizza places. Sally's Pizza in New Haven. If you're ever in Connecticut, go to Sally's Pizza in New Haven. One of the best pizzas you'll ever have. I don't even know how they do it. It's the sauce. Something about the sauce is just you can't no other pizza can capture the sauce like Sally's does, and most Connecticut people will agree. Where's everybody here from? Where are you guys tuning in from? I'm always curious, people that watch my channel, where they're from, because apparently like a good amount of people that watch my channel are from the UK and are also from Brazil, which surprised me. So where are you guys from, if you don't mind saying? You don't have to say the exact location, but what state or what country. Oh wow, Australia. What time is it right now in Australia? San Francisco. I've always wanted to go. I've been to LA, and that's it. I've never been to San Francisco, but definitely on my list of places to go to. I went to LA one time for a week. I actually went to Camp Flog Gnaw. It's like a rap festival that Tyler the Creator puts on. And my favorite part of the entire trip was the stand up comedy. I mean, California is like the spot for stand up comedy. Went to the Comedy Store, went to the Laugh Factory, all those spots. It was amazing. Comedy Store was incredible. You pay like $20 or something like that, and there's like a 2 drink minimum, and you go in there, and there's just people from like 8 p.m. to like 1:30 in the morning or something like that, just doing like 10-minute sets. I saw like Joe Rogan, Judah Friedlander, Pauly Shore, Theo Vaughn, Montez from Workaholics, a couple other guys. Joey Diaz was supposed to be there, but he didn't show up. But 10:17, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it's 6:17 p.m. right here. So yeah, well, thanks for starting your day with me. Let's say so. Is it Saturday or Sunday where you are? I'm assuming Saturday. Saturday. Wait, no, it'd be Sunday actually. I'm assuming, right? Yeah. How long have you been in San Francisco for? Sorry, there's like a 20-second delay on everything I say. So if I'm answering questions in weird timing, that's why. So I wish there wasn't this delay, but. Sunday, yeah. That's got to be so weird when like it's Sunday there, but then there's like world news happening like in the United States where we're like right now is the primary, the Democratic primary in South Carolina, and we probably won't find out the results until tonight, Saturday night, but it's Sunday where you are. That's got to be so bizarre, I mean, I guess that's how every time zone works, but I don't even know if Australia even really cares about American news or not, but it's got to be interesting when it's like. Yeah, great question. Unfortunately, not. I was really excited about Andrew Yang. I didn't agree with every single policy of his. He had a couple policies that I wasn't crazy about, but the majority of his stuff made a lot of sense to me, and he seemed to be one of the few candidates that was actually able to appeal to Democrats and Republicans. He went like, there were a lot of, left wing Democratic liberal kind of voters that were really into him, but then also a lot of conservatives. Like he went on Ben Shapiro's show, he went on Tucker Carlson, he went on all these conservative shows. And I know YouTube is not real life, but if you look at the YouTube comments and all that stuff, like there's so many people saying, I voted Republican my whole life, but this is the only Democrat that would make sense to me. And I was trying to figure out, well, yeah, exactly. I was trying to figure out why that is, and I think a lot of it is that he's just speaking to very substantive issues that can relate to everybody, and he's not resorting to a lot of the political kind of stuff that the left and right falls into. You know what I mean? And I think he made a lot of sense to a lot of people. I thought he brought a lot of good ideas to the table. And the other day, I re-listened to his podcast with Joe Rogan. I hadn't listened to it since it first happened, and it was incredible. I mean, the entire hour and a half is just so filled with substance, and he's got so much data behind everything he's saying. Everything he says, he cites all these statistics and all these percentages and all the sources. Just a very well-informed guy. And yeah, I was really excited about him. I mean, I'm not really bummed that he dropped out, though. I think there's going to be, he's a young guy, and I'm sure he started a whole new movement that will definitely continue. But other than him, I'm not really excited about anybody, unfortunately. Since 5 of 5 is 2, would it not be easier to forget about minor chords and turn everything into dominant chords when soloing? Let me see if I understand. I think I understand. Since the 5 of 5 is 2, would it not be easier to forget about minor chords and turn everything into dominance? So that, okay, I see what you're saying. That depends. You can do that. That's going to change. So if you're just thinking, if you think dominant over the 2 chord as opposed to Dorian, it's going to change the tonality of it because you have the major third now as opposed to the minor third. So for example, instead of right, you can do that, but then major third of the 2 chord is sharp 4 of the 1. Yeah, exactly. It's a way to think about it. And I, what was I going to say? That's one. Yeah, Joe Pass does that a lot. He'll turn the 2 chord into a dominant instead of minor. So that is possible, and it's one thing you can do. People definitely do that. A lot of people too will convert dominant chords to Dorian, that's Pat Martino's big trick. So if you're playing over a D7, rather than thinking D Mixolydian or D Lydian flat 7, whatever, think A Dorian, right? So then, for example, so I'm just gonna think A Dorian. Right, so there's a lot of different things. It's called superimposing, right? Joe DiOrio did a lot of that as well. He was all about that. So it's definitely, I'm just curious, the guy from San Francisco, what is people's opinions of Andrew Yang in San Francisco? Because I know San Francisco is a very liberal city. I'm curious, does he appeal to a lot of people in San Francisco? Because he's kind of all over the place. There's so many different people that support him. I'm curious, how he appeals to a more far left kind of city. Martino, yeah. It could make things easier, possibly. Depending, for me, soloing over minor 7 flat 5 chords and converting them to Dorian, that's helped me out immensely because I have a way easier time taking all my Dorian stuff and converting it to minor 7 flat 5, playing it over the minor 7 flat 5, as opposed to thinking, Locrian. I have way more Dorian licks than I do Locrian, so if you get comfortable enough just being able to visualize it in different positions, it could definitely help. But, I could see how if you're already comfortable with, Mixolydian or something like that, then, just keep doing what you're doing. Bernie's, yeah, I had a feeling Bernie would be the bigger one out there. Yeah. I liked Bernie more in 2016. I wasn't that. Um, yeah, I do love Major 7 Sharp 5. Claude Debussy was the guy that started all this turning dominant chords into minors. That's cool. I didn't know that. I'll have to look more into that. That's really cool. I love these. I got these Debussy voices from Claire de Lune. The top note and the bottom note are actually moving together. Ah. What's the most effective metronome practice one can do for working up speed, precision in jazz? That's a great question. Um, wow, that's a tough one. Let me think. Let me think about that for a second. A couple things that you could do is, yeah, I'm craving wings too. Um, effective metronome practice when working up speed, precision in jazz. This is a tricky one because, like I said, when I started out, I was more into the shredding and stuff like that. So a lot of my technique was already developed when I got into jazz. So it was more of a matter of taking the technique and figuring out how to apply it to jazz. One thing that I did, I would just put like the metronome on here. I'll do it right now. Well, I'll take that same tune I was just doing. There Is No Greater Love. I'll figure out a speed I'm comfortable with, and then I'll just try to solo using all 16th notes over the whole thing. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stuff like that. That's maybe one thing, because then it'll force you to play 4 notes per beat. So you might have to sit down and kind of work out a couple of things to get them under your fingers, and then from there, gradually keep increasing the speed more and more and more. Beyond that, just transcribing guys that play like a lot of double time licks and stuff like that. Put them in a program, or you can just use YouTube and play it at like 75% and stuff like that. The song I was just playing is "There Is No Greater Love." Am I sweeping 1 note per string? I'm not sure. I don't know if you're referring to a specific thing that I just played. I'm not exactly sure what I was doing. 1 note per string sweeps, when I do stuff like that, that kind of gives like the Frank Gambale sound, like. That's like the Gambale. Usually, like if you're sweeping like 1 note per string, and then at one point there's like a 2, you hear it. That was I probably did something like that. Like that Joe Henderson song "Inner Urge" has got that part. It's like something like that. I don't know. I don't remember specifically, but that's like an example of a sweep that has 2 notes per string at one point. Yeah, I think it's pretty rare that people sweep just 1 note per string that has a very specific sound. That's always the hardest thing to do too, because the being able to do the hammer on at one point on the string definitely kind of like gives your right hand a break for a second. Like if you're only doing 1 note per string. Joe DiOrio does a lot of 1 note per string sweeps when he does it. But here there's like no break, as opposed to if I did something like. You hear like that little pull off, as opposed to. It's tricky. Yeah, if you want like a thing that uses a lot of like 1 note per string sweeping kind of stuff with a couple of pull-offs here and there, check out my lick of the week, the Frank Gambale video. I'll put a link for that one. That one's pretty tricky though. That's more of an advanced sweep. Alright, let's see. Here it is. Frank Gambale is like the king of sweeping, in my opinion, one of the best sweep pickers. And the sweep that I got that from was, where is it? It's like this live video of him at like a NAMM show. I don't know where the video is, but Frank Gambale is an incredibly talented sweeper. Some very fluid sweeps. And beyond that, just to give a little bit more insight into the question you had about working up speed, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the video, but I went over a bunch of exercises that I do for my warm-up, and I do it with a metronome. I did that at the very beginning of this, so if you didn't see that, when this is done and it's uploaded, just check the beginning of the video. I walk through like all my warm-ups with like scale warm-ups. And also just like maybe writing out some double time licks and stuff like that, because double time is a little bit trickier, because you can write out like a typical like a little eighth note swing line and stuff like that for a 2-5-1. But then when you have to do double time, you have to figure out ways to double the amount of notes that you're playing over one chord. So it kind of forces you to take some of the stuff that you're playing and refine it so that it lasts longer. So that can be a little bit of a challenge too. So I recommend just trying to write out some of your own lines and stuff like that, and just learn some lines from people that are really good at doing double time, like maybe somebody like Borelli Legrain, or Wes Montgomery, Julian Lage. Who else? I'm trying to think more like guys that play straight ahead stuff. Yeah, I mean that would be my recommendation. Yeah, but let's see what we got. We got an hour and 50. I'm probably going to wrap it up at the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to go for another 10 minutes. So if you guys have any last questions or anything you want to discuss, it doesn't have to be music related. It could be anything. We got talking about Wings for a while, and we talked about Andrew Yang. I'm fine fine with any of that stuff. But anything you want. Stretchiest chord voicing. This is a pretty stretchy one. This is a minor 9, A minor 9. This is a voicing. I actually got this from Joe DiOrio as well. I also found it in a Shostakovich string quartet thing. So A minor 9, middle finger on the 12th fret of A, skip a string, put your ring finger on G, pinky on B, and then your pointer finger has to stretch all the way up to the 8th fret on the first string. So this is when you really want to tilt the guitar. Then if you want to make it even harder, make it a minor major 9. A, G sharp, B, C. Sorry. That's one. This is another cool one. I like this. I like this. This is like a Schoenberg piano voicing I got from Piero Lunare. E, G sharp, C, E flat, G. Not the craziest stretch. And then this is a nice one. It's a nice like C major voicing, pointer finger on C, and then bar your pinky across the 12th fret of the 5th string all the way to the 1st string. How much do I practice? Not as much as I'd like. Most of my time is spent, working or making the videos that I make for this channel. But a lot of times when I'm making the videos for the channel, that is my practice, right? If I'm doing like a lick of the week video, I'm transcribing it and then I'm practicing it so I can play it for the video and then demonstrate it and stuff like that. But yeah, mostly now it's mostly just listening and trying to hear new things. If I hear something that I like in a recording, just figuring it out, more exploring different stuff. A lot of like what I do when I have free time now, rather than like practicing just guitar stuff and stuff like that, I will still do that from time to time. But a lot of it is I'll just take like, I have a whole like library of classical music, and I just like to take a lot of it out and just play it on the piano and just explore some different harmonies and stuff like that and see if there's any ways to translate them to the guitar. So it's more just exploring and trying to figure out new things that I could do on the guitar that aren't very typical for the guitar. That's always been like stuff that I'm very attracted to, like stuff that you don't always hear on the guitar. So yeah, I mean that's a lot of what I do. I might do like a transcription here and there, but I wouldn't say I practice every day by any stretch of the imagination. I mean I play music every day, but like to actually sit down and have like a structured practice session, not very often, unfortunately. I had a lot more time to do that when I was in college. And I remember they always said when I was in college, they said, this is the most free time you're ever going to have. And I didn't believe them. I was like, that's ridiculous. And they probably have way more free time now than they did back then. But no, that's definitely true because, life catches up to you. You have a lot of responsibilities and you have, different people in your life. As you get older, you want to keep in touch with more and more, people in your life. Thomas, how are you? I'm glad you called. I'm leaving the live stream in like 4 minutes, so you just caught it. So Thomas, any requests? My day job is music. I give lessons and I play gigs and stuff like that. I give a lot of lessons. I probably have like over 40 students right now. So a big part of my week is spent giving lessons and stuff like that. And then I play gigs. I have like a weekly gig on Wednesdays at this place in New Haven called the Al Shop, and I do gigs on the weekends and stuff like that. I got to play a Beach Boys song for Tom's dad. Thanks. Yeah, I figured I had to do more of the. I know your dad likes more like the surf rock stuff from what you've told me. So I can do some earlier Beach Boys stuff. I think it's actually in the key of D. I think I started it a half step too high, but I don't think your dad would mind that. Yeah, tell your parents I said hi. I haven't seen them in a while. I'll do one more. What's another earlier one? Yeah, help me, Rhonda. Another one of my favorite earlier ones. Um, but all right, I'm going to wrap it up now. I've been going for about 2 hours, so I'm going to wrap it up now. So thanks a lot for everybody that was hanging around. Thanks for the great questions. And we saw a lot of new people in the chat today, so appreciate you guys hanging in there. And I'll probably try to do another one next week. I'm going to hopefully try to do one of these um, hopefully once a week. I'm going to do my best. Oh, yeah, let me just go over the stretchy chord real quick. That's another nice stretchy one for A minor 9. Open A, pinky on G, ring finger on B, pointer finger on C, middle finger on G again. There's two. You got 2 stretchy chords for this week. Nice. All right. Well, thanks again for everybody for tuning in, and it was a fun chat. I appreciate all the great questions and the great insight and input. And I will see you guys next time. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next time. Take care.